This is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Crochet Cord Napkin Holder Box, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. You can go to the link in the description or search for mooglyblog.com Crochet Cord Napkin Holder Box. Now, as you can see, I've designed this pattern to fit your standard napkins, but it's also a great size for anything else you'd like to organize in your home or office. It measures approximately 8 inches by 8 inches square by 2.5 inches high, which is a standard size for napkin boxes that I was able to find by searching around for products that are available. However, you can adjust this pattern to make it any size simply by continuing to increase the base and then working up the sides evenly, or by stopping earlier for a smaller box. It's really quite easy to adjust, and you don't have to stop or end at a particular point. It's just the size that you want to make. To make this pattern, we do use 2 yarns, Bernat Handicrafter and Bernat Macramé. We're also using a USH 5mm crochet hook. It's also helpful to have your standard crochet supplies like scissors and stitch markers, and when you're using Bernat Macramé, you'll also want to have a little bit of Scotch tape and possibly some hot glue or E6000, whatever glue you like to use around, a nice strong craft glue. Let's take a closer look at our finished crochet cord napkin holder box. Now, when we look at the inside of this napkin holder box, what we're actually seeing are the wrong side of our stitches. We crochet in the round, starting here right in the center, work our way out with gentle increases here, basically sort of like a granny square, but we're making single crochets and crocheting over a cord. Then, when we've got the size of the box we need, that's our base, then we crochet evenly up the sides. And we get this really great look by crocheting over the cord, and you can see it gives a really great stiffness and look for our basket. This will fit in many styles of decor, and as I say, you can easily adjust it. Make it taller for a great big basket, make it smaller to hold small things like rings and keys and all those little things we all need containers for. You can really adjust this pattern to make it work for your home, and it combines beautifully with the Crochet Cord Nesting Bowls, which is another free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com for round bowls to make it a matching set. Now, one of the more unusual supplies I mentioned you'll need is Scotch tape, or really any sort of clear cellophane tape or washi tape or even masking tape. And of course, brand itself doesn't really matter, but just a generic whatever household tape you have laying around. Because if you look closely here, Bernat Macramé, it can absolutely fray. And that's part of the joy of this yarn and one of its features that you want for some projects. But for this project, we don't want it to fray. So I recommend anytime you cut your yarn that you go ahead and add some tape to the end. You can wrap it right around the end of the yarn, just really tightly, basically like an aglet at the end of a shoelace. And then, of course, you can cut it off when you go to weave in your ends at the end of your project, or take it off or whatever you need to do. I even like sometimes to wrap it around the yarn where I'm going to cut it before I cut it, and then both ends are already wrapped for me and I don't have to rewrap both of those ends. Basically, it just keeps the end of the yarn secured, keeps it all from unwinding, and as I say, you can trim through it if you want to wrap it before you cut the yarn, or just cut off that taped off end when you're done with your project. Now, in the original napkin holder box, I used the off-white color of Bernat Handicrafter and the natural color of Bernat Macramé for a really tone-on-tone look. But of course, you can use whichever colors of Handicrafter and Macramé you like, combine, contrast, mix and match for your own personal touch. So for demonstration, I'll be using the overcast because it's a little bit easier to see on the natural. Okay, so to begin our crochet cord napkin holder box, we're going to start with color A, our Bernat Handicrafter. And for round 1, we're just going to use this yarn. We won't bring in the macrame until round 2. So we want to come in about 12 inches. And normally that's where I would put a slip knot. But for this pattern, I recommend instead starting by simply twisting the yarn over your hook like this. Putting a knot in the bottom of this box creates a little bit of a lump there that personally I just don't like. If you'd like to start with a slip knot, you can, but I like to just put a little loop on my hook like this to begin this one. Then we're simply going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll join with a slip stitch to the first chain made to form a ring. So right back in that very first chain made, however you like to go into that. There we are. So now, let me just open it up here. We have a teeny tiny ring that we can work into for round 2. Now round 2 is where we're going to start adding our Bernat Macramé or color B. Basically, we want to go ahead and chain 1. Go ahead and insert your hook in the center of that ring. Just going to not worry about that tail end for now, let that hang out there. And then before we yarn over and pull up our loop, we want to go ahead and lay the end of our Bernat Macramé just right over our hook, just a crochet right over it. So you can see I've got my taped off end here, and I'm going to come in about 6 inches or so. Just want to give myself a little extra room here. Then I will go ahead and bring my working yarn right over that, and then I can yarn over and pull it up through that ring so that now I've crocheted over the Bernat Macramé. And I want to pull this loop up nice and high. I don't want the macrame to be behind or underneath this ring. I want it to be basically on top of it. So I want to be able to pull these stitches up nice and high so that it sits on top. Then I can yarn over and pull through to finish our first single crochet. Then I'm going to make a second single crochet. So I go right back into that ring and just make sure to work right over that macrame for this stitch as well, and pull those loops up nice and high and finish that second single crochet. Then we chain 2, 1, 2, and that was our first repeat. Single crochet 2, and then chain 2. So there's 1, and we're going to do this twice more. We go right back into that ring and single crochet twice. Again, we want to make sure to pull those loops up and get that cord to sort of sit on top of our stitches rather than behind them. So there's 1 and 2, and then chain 2 again. 1, 2. Then we'll do that one more time. Go right into that ring for 1, 2 single crochets, chain 2 again. And that makes the first 3 sides of our square there. If we pull it out, you can see we've got 3 sides. 1, 2, 3. So now we go back into that ring for 2 more single crochets and continue to work over that Bernat Macramé with each stitch. So there's 1 and 2. There we are. I'm not going to worry about the ends of the yarn here. You can see got the end of both of my yarns hanging out here. I'll just go ahead and pull those to the back out of the way. And now what I'm going to do to finish up round 1 is I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to single crochet in the first single crochet of the round. So instead of chaining 2 and joining with a slip stitch, I'm going to chain 1 and single crochet in this first stitch. And what that will do is it will have my hook end up back in the middle of, effectively, this corner's chain 2 space. We're going to count that chain 1 and single crochet as if they were a chain 2, like the rest of these corners. So we've got our chain 1. We find that very first single crochet we made right there, and we put a single crochet right in that one. So we want to pull up our loop nice and high again and simply single crochet. Now, because this is a joining single crochet, we're not working over the Bernat Macramé for this one. We just work over the Bernat Macramé when we make those single crochets into that ring, or then as we continue into other stitches. Our chains and our single crochet join, we don't work over the cord for those stitches. That chain 1 and single crochet we just made, again, are going to count as a chain 2. So after that, we are ready for round 3. Rounds 3 through 12 continue on to make the rest of the bottom of the box, and they're all worked the same way. So let's go ahead and make round 3 together. We are going to continue to enclose B, the macrame, in each single crochet stitch other than that single crochet join. So we start with a chain 1, and then we are going to single crochet in the same chain space, meaning that chain 1 and single crochet we just made, we want to go right back in that chain space right there, so right under or to the side of that single crochet, if you will. And for this one, we want to go ahead and work over color B. There we are. So we've got our first single crochet for round 3. Then we single crochet in each stitch to the next chain space. So since it's only round 3, there's only a couple stitches. As we continue, of course, that will continue to grow. So we go to that next stitch right there and make sure we enclose our cord. So there's that stitch. Go to the next stitch, make another single crochet. And again, you can see I'm holding the cord on top of these stitches, not behind. That's really important to this. We want to just gently run our cord along our stitches as we go. We don't want to pull too tight. We don't want to leave it super loose, then you end up with lumps. If it pulls too tight, it pulls in tightly. We just want to gently run it right along our stitches as if we were working over an end. So we've worked into each of those stitches until we got to that next chain 2 space. So we get to that chain 2 space, we go into that space and work over our cord for 1 single crochet. Then we chain 2, 1, 2. We don't try and enclose that cord in the chain 2 or anything. Then we go right back into that chain 2 space for another single crochet, so we can finish that corner. Created a new corner here for round 3. Then we do the same thing. Single crochet in each stitch, enclosing the cord until you get to the next corner chain space there. So here we are again at our corner chain space. We go right into that space for a single crochet, then we chain 2 and single crochet again. Continue to single crochet in each stitch to the next chain space. So there's 1 and 2. We're only on round 3, so we're back at our chain space again. So we go right into that space for a single crochet, chain 2, followed by a single crochet. And now we're at our last side here for round 3. So we're going to single crochet in each of these stitches. There's 1, 2. Okay, so we're on our last side and we've single crocheted in each of those stitches, which brings us back to this corner. When we go to make the first single crochet in this corner, which is the second one we're making, but the first one of the pair, if you will, we want to make sure that we go under just that chain 2 right there and then over the new piece of cord. We don't want to enclose the piece of cord that's underneath it that we caught when we made that first single crochet for this corner over here, the first single crochet of the round. We want to make sure we go just under basically that chain 1 and the cord there. Then we can chain 1 again, go ahead and push that cord out of the way and join with a single crochet to that first single crochet of the round. Once again, we want to pull that up a little bit higher, and now that will effectively be our new chain 2 space. And that is how you make round 3, and indeed all the rest of the rounds for the bottom of this box. So as shown, I went through round 12, but of course you can stop at any point. Let's go ahead and make a bit of round 4 together, and then we'll move on to the sides of the box. So as I said, round 4 and all the rest of the bottom rounds are exactly the same as what we've just done. We're just getting a little bigger each round. I just want to show it one more time, just because it can be a little tricky here at the end. We're going to start again with a chain 1, find that chain 2 space, the chain 1 there and that single crochet, go underneath that single crochet you just made, and then up over the cord. We want to just pull that up here. And we want it to be a little bit tighter back here so that it makes it easier not to catch when we come back to work into that chain 2 space again. So really sort of pull this one right up there on top of your hook before you make that first single crochet there. You can kind of zhuzh it a little bit, straighten it out. You can still move that cord within the stitch, so if you need to adjust that, you can. Then, as I said before, we simply single crochet in each stitch across until we come to our next corner. So we'll work our way across here. Of course, we've got a couple more stitches now that we're another round on. There we go. And if your yarns start to get twisted together, you can just take a break every once in a while and untwist them. But I didn't find too much twisting with this one. Then, whenever you come to your corner chain 2 space, we single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. Make sure we go over that cord again. And then continue on across to the next corner. So just single crochet in each stitch until you get to the chain 2 space, where you single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. And again, those chains don't get worked over a cord. They are simply our corner chain 2 space there. So here we are in our corner chain 2 space again. So we've got our stitch, chain 2, and another single crochet. So I'll continue all around and I'll meet you at that beginning corner again. Okay, so here I am back at that beginning corner again. So I just wanted to show this one more time. Now it's a little bigger. It might be a little bit easier to see. So I've come to my chain 2 space here, or really my chain 1 and single crochet. So I want to insert my hook under that chain 2, but not catching that little bit of cord back there at the corner. So again, just go over that cord and under that chain 2, like so. Then chain 1, and then because this single crochet is part of the join and not a single crochet, so to speak, we are going to single crochet in the top of that stitch, but not over the cord. Let it just hang on back there. We just treat that single crochet as if it was a chain, but we do it to put us back in the middle of that chain space. So that lets us continue on in pattern to make this box just as big around as we'd like. As soon as you've got your box the size you'd like in terms of the base, then it's time to start making the sides. So when you're ready to make the sides of your box, then you begin with the instructions starting in round 13. We're going to continue to enclose B, or macrame, in each single crochet stitch that we make. So we start with a chain 1, and we single crochet right back in that chain 2 space again, basically under that single crochet we made, but we want to, again, make sure we bring up the macrame and crochet over it, right there. Then, when we crochet into these single crochets, we're going to crochet under the back loop only. Now, if we look at the top of a stitch, you can see there are 2 loops. Usually, we crochet under both of them, but the one closest to us is called the front loop, and the one furthest away is called the back loop. And it doesn't matter from which direction you're looking at your stitches, it's always relative to you, the crocheter. So the one closest to you will always be front, and the one furthest away will always be back. So for this round, we want to crochet under the back loop only. So we're going to insert our hook just right in the center of that V so that it comes up under just that back loop, and then we can make our single crochet. But don't do what I just did and forget to enclose that cord. We still want to enclose the cord in each of these stitches. So we just go under that back loop and pull the cord up and enclose it. Now you can see this is going to push these stitches to the back a little bit. That's why I like this. It starts to create the sides for our bowl. So it's okay if you find that your cord wants to stay in back of these stitches just a little bit, because we are sort of forming a 90-degree angle here as we come up for the sides of our bowl. So we simply back loop only single crochet over our cords here until we get to that chain 2 corner again. Then when we get to the chain 2 corner, we just work 2 single crochets right in that chain 2 space. But we do want to make sure to enclose the cords in this. We're not doing chain 2s at the corner anymore. We are just going to work 2 single crochets right in that chain 2 space, and then that brings us to our next side. Then we can go right back to our back loop only single crochet. Again, still remembering to enclose our cord in each and every stitch. So continue to crochet around, putting 2 single crochets in each of those chain 2 corner spaces. You don't have to try and work under the back loop only of the chains. I just went ahead and put those under the chain space. I think it gives it kind of a neat and different look in the finished project. But if you'd prefer the look of crocheting under just the back loop of the chains, that's certainly something you can do if you'd like. So simply continue to work around here for round 13, and I'll see you when we get to the end. Okay, so I've worked my way around for round 13, and I'm back at that original corner. So one more time, we want to go just under that chain space and enclose it with a single crochet. And then because we've already got one in this chain space here, we can simply join with a slip stitch. And of course, for the slip stitch, we don't try and enclose that macrame either. We simply join our round right there. So then for rounds 14 through 19, which are all the same, we're simply building up the sides of our box. And you can really make as many or as few rows here as you'd like to make your box as tall or as short as you'd like it to be. So I'm going to start again with a chain 1. And now I simply go right into that first single crochet. And I bring up my rope. And now I want to go ahead and get it right on top of those stitches again. So now I'm simply going to single crochet in each stitch around, enclosing that cord in each and every stitch. We don't have any chain 2s at any corners. We've simply got a nice round of single crochet to crochet into. We don't have to worry about going to the back loop or the front loop. These are just standard stitches. The only big difference here is we've got a cord to enclose in each one of them. So as I say, we simply continue around building up the sides of our box. Make sure that you're laying your cord just nicely over your stitches. If you find that it's becoming a little too loose, you can always give it a little tug to tighten that up a little bit. If it's becoming too tight, you can always pull back a little bit, but you want to sort of check it after each round or so, because, the further you go, obviously, the harder it will be to adjust. So simply continue building up the sides of your box until it's as tall or as short, again, as you would like it to be. And then we'll be ready to finish off our crochet napkin box. Okay, so when you've got your box to the height you like, then you can go ahead and finish off. You can join with a slip stitch to that first stitch again if you'd like to finish off that round. But what I like to do is go ahead and finish off with my seamless join. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut my color A, or my Bernat Handicrafter. And then I also want to go ahead and cut the macrame here. So I haven't actually finished off that stitch yet. So let me just go ahead and pull up on that. So that way it won't come out. It's not joined yet, but it also won't come out or go anywhere. So I can leave that laying there for a minute. And then I want to grab just a little bit more of that tape. And then we simply wrap that around. And I'm going to come out about 6 inches or so just to give myself a good amount of space to work with. It's probably a lot more than I need, but it's always better to have too much and have to trim it off than to have too little, and then you're really in trouble. So as you can see here, I'm just taking the opportunity to wrap that up again really well here, just right over around the space where I want to cut it, and then I'll just cut right in the center. And now both of those ends are taped up, including the rest of the skein, so I can set that aside. I did find, as written, you should have enough yarn, or enough macrame, I should say, to make 2 boxes with each one of these. However, if you change the size, you may need more or less, depending, again, on how you've gone. So now both my ends are cut. I'm not going to worry about the macrame right now. I'm just going to fold that to the inside, but I do need to join this last round. So what I want to do now is take a yarn needle, and I can go ahead and thread this right on my yarn needle. Find that very first stitch there, that first one that we would have joined to with a slip stitch. I go under those 2 loops with my needle and simply join it with a sewn join. I find this looks just a little bit neater. It's one of those little touches, sort of like starting with that loop rather than with a knot, which just, I think, makes the finished object look a little bit nicer. So then we can simply pull that closed as tight as you'd like. I like to leave it a little bit open so it looks like another stitch there, and then weave in that end as you normally would. Both of the ends of the Handicrafter can be woven in just like normal yarn ends. But we want to use them a little bit before we do. What we're going to do is we're going to be using them to basically tack down these macrame ends. So let's go ahead and deal with our end first, the final end right here at the top. If we look at our bowl right here, you can see right there is sort of where it finishes off. So what I can do is I can take this end of my yarn, this end of my Handicrafter, and use it to sort of sew this end down. So I can basically come through my fabric here. Oops, it fell right out of my needle. Usually I have a little bit smaller needle, but I didn't have one sitting on my desk today, so I grabbed this one. There we go. So now what I want to do is I'm going to lay that cord right over there, and I want to basically sew it down. I just want to sew over it a few times. Basically going right along that stitch so that without looking for it, you won't notice that I've done it a couple times there. And now that that's secured down really tightly right there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my glue. And as I mentioned, you can use hot glue, you can use all sorts of different glues. I tend to use E6000. You want to make sure you get the clear or transparent one. It also comes in black, and unless you're making a black colored bowl, of course, that's not the look you're usually going for. This yarn, this glue, I should say, can be a little bit messy. I like to have a paper towel available, and then I just have an old paintbrush that I actually use the handle for to help me apply it. So I thought I'd go ahead and show you how I do that right here, which is a little scary. It's always a little scary using glue on camera. Let me get the lid off here. Always a little bit tough on these guys. There we go. And this is the kind of glue that, like I say, it kind of wants to come out on its own sometimes, so it's always a really good idea to have a paper towel or something to protect your surface. So I tend to just get a little bit of it here. There we go. Of course, today it doesn't want to come out. Must be a little chilly. I'll get a little bit here right just on the end of my paintbrush handle. And then I will just dab it right where I want to glue down the end of that cording. So just like that, and basically hold it there. And I can add a little bit more if I want to, if it doesn't feel secure. Basically, you want to be able to sort of enclose the end of that macrame there so it doesn't start coming back up. So I will add quite a bit, really, right under there. It does dry really nicely clear. I find it's a little bit easier to use than hot glue because I'm not burning my hands. But once you've got it glued down a little bit, that's when you can carefully sort of trim it off. Just going to trim it real close right there, trying not to accidentally cut the rest of it. And then once you've got it cut, I like to take a little bit more of the glue. You can see it's trying to come out on its own there. And then I'm just going to dab it right over those ends, right over those cut ends a little bit. And as I say, this is why you really want to make sure you get the kind that dries clear. But this is a really nice glue, I find, for this sort of project. And then, of course, you can just let that air dry. If you want to, you can get this back on the needle here. Let me get the gluey end on the paper towel there. But while the glue is even still wet, if you want to, you can take a couple more stitches to really tack that down right across that cut end. Whatever makes you feel comfortable. This glue dries very strong and very nicely, so I don't want to touch it too much here with my fingers. But I will just sort of sew that end down really well, like that, and then let that dry. And then after that's dry, I would go ahead and weave this end in like I normally do. And then, of course, when it comes to taking care of the first end, it's basically doing the same thing. I like to sort of curl it up a little bit right there and sew it right down into the middle, and then glue that up as well. Let it air dry before you try and use it for sure, and weave in those final ends, and then you'll be all set with your crochet napkin holder box. And that's how to crochet the Crochet Cord Napkin Holder Box, which again, you'll find the free written pattern for, as well as right and left-handed video tutorials on mooglyblog.com. There, you'll also find links to all the supplies you need. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.